Welcome to Hard Script.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. The last words I ever said to him hit harder than any punch I could have thrown. She's yours now. Fully. Completely. Whatever she becomes, she's your problem. And the look in his eyes? It shifted from arrogant confidence to something closer to panic. But let me take you back. 2 months before that moment, I still believed in her. Her name was Emily. We'd been together almost 5 years. She was sharp, magnetic, the kind of woman people noticed when she walked into a room, and she loved that. Maybe too much. At first, I thought her social nature was just charm. But over time, charm started to feel more like strategy. She could switch personalities depending on the room. I told myself that was emotional intelligence. Now I know better. The night everything began to crack, we were at a party, her coworker's birthday. I watched her across the room, laughing harder than usual, leaning in too close to someone I didn't recognize. When I walked up, she barely noticed. Her hand was on his arm. He was saying something about late nights at the office. She laughed like they shared a secret. Later, in the car, I asked who he was. Her tone dropped instantly. He's just a friend. You're being weird. Weird. Right. But that was the moment I stopped trusting her words and started watching her actions. Over the next week, I became quieter. She noticed. You're being cold, she said. No, I was calculating. Because once you feel the shift, once love starts to feel like manipulation, you stop speaking emotionally and start moving strategically. That's what I did. While she slept, I pulled phone logs. Late-night calls to a number not saved in her contacts. Payments to restaurants I'd never been to. The truth wasn't hiding. It was just waiting for me to stop lying to myself. Then I made a decision. No confrontation. No outburst. No tears. I wouldn't fight for her. I would walk away so cleanly that her reflection would haunt her longer than my presence ever did. But fate had one last twist. Because the man she thought was her escape, he reached out to me. Through a mutual acquaintance. Said he wanted to clear the air. And that's when it happened. He said, smugly, she was never really yours, man. I didn't flinch. I just said, she's now completely yours. Every piece of her. And in that moment, something broke. Not in me, in them. Because the illusion cracked. And the fallout? It was just beginning. After that exchange, I didn't speak to either of them again. Not directly. Because I wasn't interested in closure. I was building distance. The kind of distance you don't measure in miles, but in silence. Emotional silence. Strategic silence. It started the next morning. I left for work early, didn't say goodbye. She texted me mid-afternoon. Everything okay? I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. She was already someone else's responsibility. And the moment I accepted that, I started making moves she couldn't see yet. Step 1. Control the finances. I changed the passwords to all joint accounts. Transferred my half to a private one. Froze our shared credit card. Disabled her access to the emergency savings. She never noticed. She wasn't paying attention to what she thought she still owned. Step 2. Secure the exit. I called a realtor to evaluate our condo. She'd moved in with me 2 years ago, but the deed and mortgage were mine alone. She never even asked. She thought comfort was commitment. It wasn't. It was temporary shelter. That weekend, she posted a photo of them together. Same guy. New setting. Her hand resting lightly on his chest. The caption read, "Sometimes the heart knows before the mind does." Poetic. But behind that smile, I saw desperation. She wanted me to see it. To feel something. But my screen stayed cold. I logged out and moved forward. I packed a bag quietly that night and stayed at a friend's place. Left her a note. Take your time. I'll be out of the condo by next month. No anger. No begging. Just distance. Measured. Clean. She called 3 times that night. Didn't answer. Next day, I got a text. We need to talk. But we didn't. She had already done all the talking. With her actions. With her choices. And now, the consequences weren't coming from revenge. They were coming from indifference. The friend I stayed with, Marcus, had seen his own breakup unravel in chaos. He said to me, "Man, you're too calm." But that's the thing. When you've seen someone's truth and accepted it without resistance, you don't rage. You release. Because once a person shows you their pattern, it's not your job to fix it. It's your responsibility to walk away before it wrecks you, too. And that's exactly what I was doing. Silently. Strategically. Without a backward glance. You don't have to look hard when you stop lying to yourself. That's what I learned. Once I was out of the condo, she assumed the silence meant indecision, that I was spiraling, that I'd come crawling back. Instead, I was watching. Not through her phone. Not through spyware. I didn't need it. The truth was in plain sight, where it always had been. There was a Venmo trail. Quiet little transactions labeled with emojis. One for a bottle of wine. One with a fire emoji. One that just said cab ride. Cab ride. That one stayed in my mind. Why? Because it landed at 1:42 a.m. Same night she told me she was at a friend's watching Netflix. The recipient? The same guy? Ben. That told me everything I needed. Not the amount. Not the timing. The carelessness. The confidence that I wouldn't check. Wouldn't question. Wouldn't act. But I was acting. Every day I was gone, she lost something. Access to my space, my stability, my silence. Because the longer I said nothing, the louder her panic became. One of her friends, Sophie, sent me a message. We all thought you were overreacting. But now, I'm not so sure. That's how you know the shift is happening. When the people who once sided with her start looking confused, start asking quiet questions, start going silent around her. I didn't respond. I just kept collecting facts. Dates, logins, screenshots. Not for revenge, just in case she tried to twist the story later. She had a habit of rewriting history, of being the victim in every version she told. Not this time. She posted a photo a week later. Alone this time. A sad quote about trust being a mirror once shattered. She was losing control of the narrative. And control, that was her addiction. She tried calling again. Left a voicemail. I just want to talk. Just to clear the air. But there was no air left to clear. She polluted it. Now she could breathe in her own fog. And me? I wasn't trying to expose her. I was simply ensuring my exit was bulletproof. Because once you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you become untouchable. And untouchable is exactly what I was building toward. The day I vanished was ordinary. No dramatic goodbye. No suitcase at the door. Just a Thursday. But while the city moved like usual, I pulled my final thread. I terminated the lease. Forwarded my mail. Deleted my location from every shared app. The silence after that was something different. Not peaceful, surgical. Because when you disappear with precision, it's not absence. It's presence, just redirected. She texted, asking where I was. This is childish, she wrote. Then, you're making this harder than it needs to be. I didn't reply. I didn't block her either. Let her words land into a void where nothing echoed back. Because I'd learned something about power. It doesn't come from control. It comes from unavailability. The more she reached, the less I existed. It drove her insane. That weekend, mutual friends had a party. I didn't go, but she did. And Ben was with her. But here's the twist. He didn't look comfortable. My friend Marcus was there. Later he told me. She kept looking around. Like she expected someone to show up. She did. She expected me. To show up. To snap. To react. To fight for her. But I was done playing roles in a story she wrote to feed her ego. Let her co-star stand beside her now. Let him hold the same bomb she once disguised as beauty. She wasn't mine to lose. She was someone else's lesson to learn. And I wasn't just gone physically. I was unreachable mentally. Because vanishing isn't escape. It's execution. I changed my number. Closed every account she had access to. Unlinked our Spotify. Even deleted the shared Google Calendar. No more reminders of shared grocery lists, birthdays, brunch plans. Gone. Piece by piece. I took my life back from the background she'd painted herself into. That's when I noticed something else. People stopped asking about her. Conversations shifted. No more, how's Emily? No more cautious silences. Just clean air. And in that air, I breathed again. Without her scent on my pillows. Without her voice in my routines. Without her weight on my focus. Ben had what he wanted. Or thought he did. But what he didn't realize. The same rope she pulled me with she was handing to him. And I wasn't going to warn him. Because some lessons can't be taught. Only lived. And I was finally done living them for her. It started with whispers. Not from her. Not from him. From the people around them. The ones who used to envy her glow. Someone posted a story at a rooftop bar. You could see them in the background. Emily and Ben. The body language? Awkward. Forced. Two people playing at something that wasn't fun anymore. I didn't watch it twice. I didn't need to. She wasn't made for stillness. And that's what Ben was. Stable, careful, unremarkable. The exact opposite of what she once accused me of being, ironically. Another message came through a week later, this time from someone I barely knew. An acquaintance. Man, whatever you did, she looks like a ghost now. But I didn't do anything. That was the point. I gave her the stage, the lights, the exit. I left her with the fantasy. And fantasies are loud when they're new. But silence always follows. Ben had started showing cracks. He wasn't used to chaos disguised as spontaneity. Not used to over-explaining text messages, defending why he couldn't pick up at 2 a.m., or justifying why he liked someone's post. Sound familiar? Yeah, he was walking the path I'd paved, with the same emotional landmines she'd buried under charm and half-truths. She posted less. When she did, the captions turned from confident to cryptic. Things like, "Some people only love you when you're easy to love." That wasn't aimed at him. It was a projection. Her reality slipping. She wanted a reaction from me, from anyone. But I gave her nothing. Instead, I focused inward. I started a new project at work. Picked up boxing again. Weekends were no longer battlegrounds of moods and manipulation. They were mine. And as I built, she unraveled. Ben wasn't the villain. He was just another participant in her cycle. Thinking he'd caught something rare, only to realize he'd walked into a loop. And me? I was finally outside the loop. Observing, not involving. Because the power isn't in what you destroy. It's in what you refuse to touch again. Her friends stopped posting about her. Ben locked his account. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, slow, hollow. The same way she once drained me. Only now, she was the one watching someone else fade without explanation. And no one was coming to save her from that kind of silence. It was never supposed to be public. She was always calculated, always composed. But when someone builds a life on image, truth doesn't explode, it leaks. And hers began to bleed out at a mutual friend's dinner party. I wasn't there, but I got the story from two different people, both unprompted. She showed up alone. No Ben, no announcement, just silence in his place. Someone asked about him. Light, polite. She laughed it off. Ben's busy. Work's been rough. But there was a pause, too long, too tense. Then another guest, someone who didn't know her history, asked a question. Wait, weren't you with that guy who went ghost? What happened with him? That's when it cracked. She froze. Gave one of those smiles that barely holds. Yeah, that was complicated. Then someone else chimed in. A little too casually. I always wondered how you pulled that off. Dude was solid. Quiet. Seemed like he worshipped you. And just like that, the air shifted. Because that was the part she never expected to face. Not judgment. Not confrontation. Recognition. Recognition that the narrative wasn't hers to control anymore. I had said nothing. Posted nothing. And yet, the room didn't believe her story. Because silence, when paired with strength, speaks louder than any defense. A friend of mine who was there texted me that night. Man, you won without saying a word. She looked small. But I didn't celebrate. There's no pride in watching someone drown in their own choices. Only clarity. That day marked a shift. She started trying to rewrite again. New posts. Sudden apologies. Subtle digs aimed at no one, but meant for me. But no one cared. Because by then, the story had already written itself. The one where the quiet guy walked away and never looked back. And the loud one. She stayed too long in the echo chamber she built. Now every word bounced back at her with no audience left to catch it. She lost the crowd. Not from scandal. From subtraction. Every time I didn't reply. Every time I didn't show up. Every time I chose quiet over conflict. She lost her power. And in that silence, she finally heard herself. But by then, no one else was listening. She thought isolation would hurt me. That disappearing meant I was the one suffering. But real isolation isn't silence from others. It's silence from yourself. And that's where she was now. Disconnected from everyone. The phone calls slowed. The invitations stopped. The online persona she used to feed starved. Because people don't rally around ambiguity. They drift toward clarity. And I had become the embodiment of that. Sharp lines. No drama. No posts. No explanations. Just a man who moved on without spectacle. And her? She became the question no one asked anymore. I heard through a friend that she'd tried reconnecting with old friends, distant cousins, even former coworkers. The same people she used to roll her eyes at were now her support system. But there's a difference between company and connection. They sat with her, smiled politely, but their eyes told the truth. They saw through it. The late-night sob stories. The blame swapping. The victim routine. They weren't buying it. Because the math didn't add up. How does a man like me, silent, calm, steady, just vanish? The answer they landed on wasn't betrayal. It was preservation. She wasn't abandoned. She was released. And that's the weight she couldn't carry. Because when you blame everyone, you isolate yourself. And now, I was the proof that healing doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it's the man who doesn't speak that leaves the loudest silence. And her life? It echoed, not with accusations, but with the absence of defense. She messaged me once more. A long, wandering text. No apology. No ownership. Just noise. I didn't reply. She followed it with a voice note. I deleted it before listening. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Because when someone tries to drag you back into the version of you they had power over, it's not communication. It's an ambush. And I'd already survived that war. So I stayed silent. And she stayed isolated. Not because I shut her out, but because she never let anyone in for real. And now, for the first time, the mirror faced her without distraction. No applause. No audience. Just reflection. And sometimes, that's the worst punishment of all. She showed up. Not through a message. Not a call. She came to my office. Sat in the lobby like some kind of ghost from a past life. The receptionist asked if I wanted to see her. I didn't hesitate. No. But she stayed. For over an hour. Like she believed persistence could overwrite silence. When I finally left the building, she was still there. Standing by the elevator, arms crossed. Eyes searching. Can we talk? I nodded once. Nothing more. We stepped outside. Not far. Just enough for her to feel like she had space. But space isn't the same as access. She started with questions. About how I'd been. About why I never responded. Then she pivoted, fast. She said things like, "You just disappeared. I didn't deserve that." That's when I knew. She still didn't get it. She still believed the story was about what I did to her. Not what she did to us. I let her speak. Let her stumble through her curated confusion. And then, I said one thing. You didn't lose me. You just lost control. That was it. No raised voice. No list of receipts. No emotional breakdown. Just one sentence. And it landed harder than any scream. She froze. Tried to recalibrate. But there was nothing left to recalibrate with. Because I wasn't reacting, I was done. She tried nostalgia next. Brought up memories. Vacations. Inside jokes. But nostalgia without accountability is just manipulation dressed in perfume. So I listened. And I let it hang in the air like smoke. Visible, but fading. Eventually, she realized there was no hook. No response. No opening. And that terrified her more than any argument could. Because she knew then, I wasn't coming back. Not out of hate. Not out of pride. But because the man standing in front of her wasn't the one who used to beg for clarity. He had clarity. And clarity doesn't need closure. It just leaves. When I turned to go, she didn't follow. She didn't call out. She just stood there, surrounded by everything she'd once controlled, and none of it answering her. The confrontation ended not with fire, but with stillness. And that stillness was mine. After the confrontation, she unraveled. Not publicly. Not in some dramatic post or stage display. It was private. But collapse doesn't need an audience to be real. The stories trickled in through mutuals. She left her job. Said it was for mental clarity. But everyone knew it was because the whispers got too loud. She was no longer the woman with the golden image. The glow had faded, and all that was left was the shadow of choices she couldn't undo. I didn't celebrate her downfall. Because her fall wasn't my victory. It was just gravity. When you build your life on illusions, truth eventually pulls it down. I was already gone by then. New apartment. New rhythm. My routines no longer included thoughts of her. My mornings were quiet. My nights, peaceful. And every time she tried to resurface, even passively, I blocked it. A follow request from a burner account. Ignored. A like on an old photo. Removed. She was reaching, not because she wanted connection, but because she couldn't stand irrelevance. Control had been her currency. And now she had none. Friends stopped defending her. Even the loudest ones, the ones who once called me cold or obsessed with boundaries, had gone silent. Because silence tells a story, too. And they finally understood what I never shouted. That some exits aren't abandonment, they're escape. One day I passed her downtown. She didn't see me. She was walking alone, arms folded tight, like she was bracing against more than just the wind. And for a second, I felt nothing. No anger. No longing. No triumph. Just clarity. Her collapse wasn't loud. It didn't make headlines. But it was thorough. She was no longer the girl who controlled the room. She didn't hold eye contact. Didn't radiate command. She looked small. And I realized, what I walked away from wasn't just betrayal. It was decay. Decay masked as power. And now the mask had slipped. And underneath it was someone I no longer recognized. Someone I no longer needed to. Months passed. Silence wasn't just my weapon. It became my language. And in that silence, I rebuilt. Not to show her. Not to prove something. But because survival isn't about noise. It's about clarity. I went back to old things I used to love. Things I'd abandoned to keep peace. Piano. Early runs. Books I'd stopped reading because she called them pointless. I even reconnected with a few people she'd subtly edged out of my life. They welcomed me back like I'd just come home from a war I didn't know I'd been drafted into. One afternoon, a package arrived at my door. No name. No return address. Inside, a photo album. Our pictures. Our greatest hits. Curated like a museum of what was. Taped to the front was a handwritten note. If you ever want to remember when it was good. I didn't read the rest. I didn't need to. Because when it was good, it was never real. Not for her. And I wasn't going to romanticize manipulation just because it had a soundtrack. I took the album, dropped it in the bin without flinching. That was the last attempt. No more texts. No more sightings. She faded, finally, for real. But not before the silence had done what it always does. Echoed. Not in me, in her. I know it. Because people like her, who rely on control, don't fear being hated. They fear being forgotten. And I had become her greatest fear. Not by revenge, not by outbursts, but by absence. By becoming unreachable, unbothered, untouched by what used to shake me. I changed my number. Moved again. This time out of state. No announcement. No goodbye post. Just gone. Because sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is nothing. And the coldest thing you can do is heal. I didn't become heartless. I just stopped handing my heart to people who treat it like an option. If she's still out there hoping for a crack in the silence. There isn't one. She wanted quiet. She got it. And now, in that silence, the loudest thing she hears is her own echo. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And this time, I'm not coming back. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.